A reading from the Book of Ruth, chapter 1, verses 1 through 18. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. And a certain man of Bethlehem in Judah went to live in the country of Moab. He and his wife and 2 sons. The name of this man was Amalek, and the name of his wife, Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there, but Amalek, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. These took Moabite wives. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. When they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, so that the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband. Then she started to return with her daughters-in-law from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had considered his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she had been living, she and her 2 daughters-in-law. And they went on their way back to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that you may find security, each of you, in the house of your husband." Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud. They said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Who will go with me? Do I still have sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. Even if I thought there was hope for me, even if I should have a husband tonight and bear sons, would you then await until they were grown? Would you then refrain from marrying? No, my daughters. It has been far more bitter for me than for you, because the hand of the Lord has turned against me." Then they wept aloud again. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law. But Ruth said, "Do not press me to leave you or to turn back from following you. Where you will go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God shall be my God. Where you die, I will die. There will I be buried. May the Lord do thus and so to me, and more as well, if even death parts me from you." Well, when Naomi saw that, she was determined to go with her. She said no more to her. Thus ends the reading.
Let us stand and listen to the choir sing, "Blessed be the tie that binds."
Well, good morning. Good morning to all. I always begin by acknowledging God's goodness that is uniquely radiating right now in and through you and to all who are watching us. I want to acknowledge that. God's goodness is right here. Well, it's been a long time since I have been in worship together and sharing my reflections with you. I thank Reverend Coleman for this invitation, as I am aware that this church has just opened up for in-person services in mid-September. And I thank God for Reverend Kevin's expertise in assuring an online service for those who wished to participate during this time when the church and other faith communities were closed during the pandemic. This is still a trying time for many. How many of you were sick from COVID-19 or knew someone and or experienced loss and are still grieving. Let's call on Ruth and Naomi to be present here with us right now. As we reflect on how their devastating losses opened the doors of hope and new possibilities and transformed them both, all because they both decided to walk together. To walk together into the unknown with courage, steadfastness, and faithfulness. What can they teach us? Who are the Ruths and Naomis that our good God has sent to us during our own times of loss and grief to rouse us to walk together with courage? How do people, especially women in times of loss, cope with life-changing losses when there are no anchors to steady them, or no safety nets, or very few to catch them? Serious questions. The reading from the chapter of the Book of Ruth, and I think this book needs to be renamed to be the Book of Ruth and Naomi. Anyways, this begins in tragedy and extreme loss and leaves them with no husbands or children and no means of supporting themselves. Well, during this pandemic, we all have experienced new moments in our lives too. Thousands of lives have been changed. I want to share with you my own experience of loss during this time. The brother of my best friend, Sister Patty, died in a nursing home in Connecticut. Michael, who was Down syndrome, had been independent all his life and had lived at home with his mother and older brother. But one day, he just stopped doing everything for himself. So the family tried to do the best they could. Mother is elderly. She's now 95, I believe. They had to place him in a nursing home after trying to have a home health aide come daily to the house. Prior to the state's shutdown on traveling, I had been taking my turn to bring Sister Patty's elderly mom, who lived in New Haven, Connecticut, to visit her son, Michael. And this was to help out the family. As it turned out, Mrs. Harris also needed rehab. And God's plan was able to be at the same nursing home as her son on the rehab side. But Michael, in his 60s, was slowly fading away. Mrs. Harris was with him constantly in between her own physical therapy sessions, feeding him, reading to him, talking with him. Then one morning, I got a call from Sister Patty that Michael had passed. I immediately called her mother. But because of COVID-19 restrictions, no out-of-state travel, and I had not been fully vaccinated at the time. So I couldn't be with the family, and neither could many others. That was really, really tough. There was no wake or funeral, just a very brief burial, prayer, and blessing at the cemetery, at which only 10 members of the immediate family could be present. All I could do was call and grieve with them from a distance. That was really, really hard. How many of you have lost a loved one during this pandemic, or know a friend or neighbor who had suffered such a loss and you could not be physically present? Joan Chittister, in her Book of Ruth, 12 Moments in a Woman's Life, in her first chapter, she writes on loss. She says, "And yet loss, once reckoned, once absorbed, is a precious gift." There are spiritual lessons to be learned from loss. Just when it feels we have not one good thing left in the world, we discover within ourselves something we never noticed, never touched in ourselves, waiting to be tapped. We find inside ourselves the steel of spirit, a new resilience that it takes to survive, and what brings us to our best impossible moment of courage and strength. Sister Joan continues, loss is a catalyst of newness, a doorway to other parts of your soul, where what lies dormant in us comes alive. Comes alive. So, in the first chapter that we read today, we learned that Naomi had been married to Elimelech, who with his wife and 2 sons made a choice to survive during a time of famine and moved to Moab. I think that's currently Jordan, because there was no famine in that strange land. Going to a people of another culture and religion, of other gods and customs, who were considered their enemies, really, because of past conflicts, was an incredible risk. Would they be accepted by the people there? But God's hand was in this move. So reflecting on this reading, I began to see how devastating loss would forge a deeper relationship between these 2 women. One, a wise elder Hebrew woman named Naomi, and the other, a young Moabite Ruth, and how this would lead to life-changing decisions of walking together with courage, faithfulness, during a time of inconsolable loss. And I believe this is a story of how our good God chooses the most unlikely one to do what must be done. That's God's incredible way of ensuring that Ruth would become part of Jesus' family tree as the great-grandmother of King David. She's also mentioned in Matthew's gospel in Jesus' genealogy. Anyway, the 2 sons eventually married Moabite women, knowing that interracial marriage would be frowned upon if they ever returned home to Bethlehem. Sadly, Elimelech died, and unfortunately, the two sons died also, leaving all three women, Naomi and her daughters-in-law, Ruth and Orpah, in a very dangerous, precarious, and vulnerable situation without any males to protect and provide the resources for what they needed. That could mean death. They would have to count on and rely on each other, their own ingenuity. That's a model for us all. Embittered by this loss of loved ones and still grieving, somehow Naomi makes a choice to go back to her homeland. But she also turns her loving, compassionate heart towards her daughters-in-law and tells them, in the best interests of their future, in order to survive, they have to go back to their mother's house. I thought that was quite interesting. Not their father's house, their mother's house. Strongly urging them. I can't even imagine how difficult this decision had to be. And this conversation with Ruth and Orpah, they cried out loud again. In other words, they sobbed. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye. But what did Ruth do? Ruth clung to her. Picture that image. In other words, I'm not going to let you go. Then Naomi said, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Follow your sister-in-law. But Ruth answered, as you well sang, please do not entreat me to leave you or forsake you. And then Ruth made the most radical leap of faith, letting go of her culture, her way of life, her religion. She spoke boldly and prophetically from the deepest place of love in her heart, the promise and commitment that would last for even our time and beyond. I'm going to try to sing it. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, so shall I live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God too. Wherever you die, I shall die, and there shall I be buried beside you. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God too. This decision, where Ruth decides to go with Naomi to a land where she will be an outsider forever, and where single Moabite women would suffer severe discrimination. Despite that, that propelled her into a transformative moment that would change the rest of her life. So when do you recall having such transformative moments? Where did this path take you, and who was with you? You know, transformation doesn't happen by chance. It is truly a deliberate, as Joan Chittister says, a revolution of the soul that leads to new hope and new life, new possibilities and new risks. Now Ruth sees herself as a young woman at odds with her culture, her country, her religion, and her role in life because of her courageous choice to walk together with an elder companion she has grown to respect and love. The choice has broken all norms and the status quo. She has set out on a new path where she defines who she wants to become, rather than allowing others to define her. Joan Chittister continues, transformation is the process of coming to wholeness, of growing into someone in such a way that we become more than we ever thought we could be. And Ruth cooperated at great risk with Naomi's choice. She learned that this new God of wise Naomi's would be with her throughout. Phew, what transformative and determined words. Wherever you go, I will go. With that commitment, Naomi couldn't say anything more. What else? Because she knew that Ruth would never be swayed. I'm sure Naomi was grateful for this and so touched by Ruth's promise that they continued their journey to Bethlehem to live their new lives together, mutually making their own decisions, knowing that both had each other's back, and even more, God had their backs too. Their deep relationship would carry them through this time of loss and struggle in such a way that it would never diminish their way of loving others. I encourage you to read the rest of the 4 chapters in the Book of Ruth to find out what happens. So, who are the Ruths in your life that give you new hope and new life? Whom has God sent into your life? A friend, maybe a stranger, or friends who are willing to accompany you no matter what, seeing each other through many struggles and triumphs, through good and bad times. Someone you truly love. And how has this relationship grown, been nurtured, and changed your life? Here's one more question. How can we accompany or be a part of life's journey with others? Just think of what's going on in our world. People are experiencing poverty right here in the city. We have a new election upon us come next week. Refugees such as the 1,000 Afghan women, men, and children are coming to our state, as well as those who have already arrived, the folks who have been moved from Mass and Cass. Maybe some of you knew them. This morning, I have shared how Ruth was a loving, faithful friend and companion to Naomi through moments of loss and transformation, a mutual decision of walking together with courage. I invite you again to read the rest of the Book of Ruth to find out how they both touched each other's lives and those in community, deepening their friendship daily. In the end, the community praised Ruth as a leader by proclaiming that she is worth more than 7 sons. Let us close by asking Ruth and Naomi to be with us right now as we leave here today. Let us thank our good God for our friends and wisdom, people that have been given to us. It's all part of God's plan. I pray that we may also be open to the special and ongoing grace and gift of walking together with courage. Amen? Amen. Amen. And may our good God bless you. And remember, don't forget to vote. Thank you.
der Welt hinüberschieden. Alle Seelen ruhen in Frieden. Liebevolle Mädchenseelen, deren Tränen nicht zu zahlen, die ein falscher Freund verließ und die blinde Welt verstieß. Alle, die von ihnen schieden, alle Seelen ruhen in Frieden. Und die Sonne lachten und der Mond auf Dornen wachten, Gott im reinen Himmelslicht einzusehen von Angesicht